There's a difference between refusing to speak defeat and pretending a bill does not exist. We need to understand that difference, because one is faith and the other is denial. Suppose an obligation is due. The statement is on the table, the amount is printed plainly, and the due date is approaching. Everybody in the house can feel the pressure. Now that pressure wants to do more than inform you. It wants to govern the conversation. It wants somebody to say, we will never get through this. Nothing ever works for us. We're always going to be behind. But notice something. The bill did not say all of that. The bill stated an amount and a date. Fear added the hopeless conclusion. On the other hand, faith does not require you to hide the statement in a drawer, avoid the necessary conversation, or call an unpaid obligation paid. That is not faith. That is refusing to face what must be faced. Faith can look at the figures, tell the truth about the present condition, and still refuse to surrender the future to that condition. In other words, the fact may be real, but the fact does not have to become your identity. You may be under financial pressure, but you do not have to make pressure the Lord of your household. You may need provision, counsel, work, adjustment, or time, but need is not the same thing as hopelessness. We are going to examine 3 kinds of financial speech. First, there is fear-driven speech, which takes a present difficulty and turns it into a permanent verdict. Second, there is sensational certainty, which pretends to know an exact outcome, amount, or timetable that has not been promised. Third, there is grounded biblical agreement, which speaks with gratitude and expectation while remaining joined to wisdom, stewardship, generosity, honest work, and responsible action. Words matter, friends. They reveal what has filled our attention, and repeated words help direct what we continue to notice. They influence what we expect and which actions we consider possible. But words are not a wealth formula. They do not replace planning. They do not erase consequences. They do not guarantee that a particular sum will arrive by a date we have chosen. So listen to your own language. What are you saying when pressure rises? And then ask a second question, what practice is joined to those words? Faith-filled speech tells the truth, refuses hopelessness, and prepares the heart to act responsibly. Now that we have separated denial from faith and presumption from expectation, let us look carefully at what our words actually do and what they do not do. What you repeatedly say tends to direct what you repeatedly notice and what you repeatedly do. Now that is simple, but do not pass over it too quickly. Your words give expression to the framework within you. They can keep helplessness before your eyes, or they can keep hope and responsibility before your eyes. Notice the order. First, a statement is repeated. Then that statement becomes a familiar thought. The familiar thought begins to shape expectation. Expectation affects attention, and attention influences action. In other words, you begin to look for what you have trained yourself to expect. Suppose a person says every week nothing can improve. There's no use looking. There's no way forward. After a while, that person may stop examining expenses because adjustment seems useless. He may ignore a suitable work opportunity because he has already decided that nothing will change. He may avoid wise counsel because he assumes nobody can help. The words did not magically create the difficulty, but they helped keep his attention fixed on helplessness. Now consider another person facing the same pressure. She says, this is a genuine need, and I will not deny it, but I will not surrender to despair. I will seek wisdom, review what can be changed, do the work before me, and remain thankful for every provision. She has not pretended that the pressure disappeared. She has simply refused to let pressure close her eyes. You see, grounded speech keeps the next faithful step visible. Somebody may say, are you teaching that words produce money all by themselves? No. Words are not independent powers that erase consequences, cancel obligations, or make responsible action unnecessary. You cannot ignore your work, refuse to plan, reject counsel, and then expect a declaration to perform your duties for you. Faithful words must be joined to faithful conduct. But do not run to the opposite error. Because words are not magic does not mean words are meaningless. Words can train a person toward panic or patience, passivity or diligence, cowardice or courage. They can turn every conversation into an announcement of defeat, or they can help a household remain calm enough to think, pray, listen, and act. So ask yourself some plain questions. What phrases are repeated most often in your home when money is discussed? Do those phrases invite honest planning, or do they end the conversation? Do they encourage cooperation, or do they produce blame? Do they keep wisdom and work in view, or do they make responsible action seem pointless? Listen carefully for a few days. Write down the statements that appear whenever pressure rises. Then examine the conduct attached to them. If your words continually announce helplessness, do not merely replace them with impressive language. Replace them with truthful language that leaves room for gratitude, wisdom, and action. Faithful speech supports faithful conduct. It does not compete with it. Words help govern attention and action, but they replace neither one. And with that chain clearly before us, we can now examine the first distorted pattern, the language of fear and permanent scarcity. Fear-driven financial speech usually does more than describe a hard moment. It takes the moment and stretches it over the whole future. It speaks of permanent defeat, universal failure, approaching disaster, and everybody else having advantages that we will never have. Listen for the words that often carry that burden. Always, never, nothing, impossible. We are always behind. Nothing works for us. We will never recover. It is impossible for anything to change. Now, a person may say, I am only telling the truth. But is every part of that statement true? Perhaps the account is low today. That is a report. Perhaps an obligation cannot be met by the present due date. That is a report. But when you say your family can never recover, you have moved beyond reporting the condition. You have delivered a verdict concerning the future, and you do not know the future well enough to pronounce that verdict. The truth of the matter is that fear adds conclusions to facts. Realism says, here is what we have, here is what is due, and here is the present gap. Fear says, because there is a gap today, there will always be a gap. Realism identifies what must be faced. Fear declares that facing it will be useless. You see how the cycle works? Pressure produces fearful words. Fearful words strengthen helpless attention. Helpless attention delays action. Delayed action allows the pressure to grow. Then the increased pressure seems to prove the original fearful statement. Round and round it goes, not because the statement was a prophecy, but because it kept the household looking at despair instead of responsibility. And that language does not remain in one person's mouth. It enters the atmosphere of the home. Every expense becomes somebody's fault. Every request produces accusation. One person is ashamed to mention a need, and another is afraid to admit a mistake. Before long, money is not merely a matter to be managed. It has become a weapon for blame and condemnation. Now, do not condemn yourself because you have felt pressure or spoken carelessly. Conviction should lead to correction, not to another form of hopeless speech. Begin with one recurring statement. Write it down. Separate the fact from the fearful conclusion. If you have been saying nothing ever works for us, ask what is the actual fact. Perhaps the fact is we do not presently have enough for this obligation. That is honest. Then ask what truthful sentence leaves room for gratitude, counsel, work, and a next step. You might say this obligation is real and we need wisdom. We will review our choices, seek sound help, and do what we can faithfully today. That sentence does not deny pressure. It denies pressure the right to define the whole household. And once we recognize fearful exaggeration, an important question comes before us. How can we name a real obligation without allowing lack to sit on the throne? Go back to that bill on the table. Faith does not turn it face down and hope it disappears. Faith reads it. Faith records the amount. Faith notices the due date. Faith brings it into an honest conversation and begins considering a responsible response. Now, you may have a financial problem, but that does not mean you are a hopeless person. You may have made an irresponsible decision, but that mistake does not have to become your permanent name. You may feel uncertain about what to do next, but uncertainty does not mean you have been abandoned. We must learn the difference between what we possess and who we are. A household can have a shortage without taking shortage as its identity. A person can carry an obligation without wearing shame as a garment. State the condition accurately. This amount is due. This amount is presently available. This is the gap that remains. There is no condemnation in those figures. Numbers can show you what requires attention, but they cannot tell you that your life is ruined. A due date can tell you when a response is needed, but it cannot prophesy your entire future. Denial avoids the figures, the deadline, and the conversation. Faith is willing to bring them into the light. You see, hiding from a fact does not honor God, and surrendering to a fact does not honor God. The balanced position is calm acknowledgement joined to obedient action. Consider three people facing the same obligation. The first panics and says, "I have ruined everything. I never do anything right." The second dismisses the matter and says, "I will not acknowledge that," while taking no action. The third says, "This obligation is real. I will not condemn myself, and I will not ignore it. I will seek wisdom and take the next responsible step." That third person has not escaped responsibility. He has preserved the dignity necessary to fulfill it. Suppose a husband and wife sit down together. Instead of blaming one another, they say, "Here is what is due. Here is what we have. Here are the expenses we can adjust. We are thankful for what is present, and we will decide together what must happen next." That conversation makes room for truth, gratitude, cooperation, and action. Accusation would have scattered their attention. Agreement gathers it. Perhaps a past mistake contributed to the pressure. Then admit it, correct it, learn from it. But do not repeat the mistake every day by turning it into a permanent identity. Repentance should produce changed practice, not endless verbal punishment. Here is a simple three-part pattern you can use. First, name the fact. Second, affirm the conviction that will govern you. Third, state the next responsible action. This is what we owe. We will not be ruled by fear or shame. Today we will review the account and make the necessary call. That is not merely softer language for appearance's sake. It is truer language because it includes both the condition and your responsibility before God. It allows you to discuss bills, reduced income, debt, or mistakes without enthroning lack. But remember, fear is not the only error. A person can run away from fearful speech and go straight into sensational certainty. That is the second pattern we must examine. Sensational certainty often sounds bold. It uses confident words, strong tones, and dramatic predictions. But boldness of delivery does not make a claim true. A statement can sound spiritual and still reach beyond what a person can responsibly say. There is a difference between confident trust and invented certainty. You can be firmly persuaded that God is faithful, that wisdom is available, and that you need not surrender to fear, while still admitting that you do not know the exact source, amount, method, or timing of provision. Now, sensational speech does not like that kind of humility. It wants to announce that a certain amount will arrive by a certain day through a particular means. Then, if anyone asks a careful question, caution is labeled unbelief. But asking whether a claim is true is not unbelief. Examining a decision is not fear. Wisdom does not become your enemy because you are under pressure. Suppose someone has an obligation due and announces that an effortless windfall will settle it by Friday. Because he has attached faith to that one outcome, he postpones the necessary call. He continues spending without adjustment. He neglects available work and rejects counsel because every practical suggestion seems less spiritual than the dramatic prediction. What has happened? His speech has not strengthened responsible action. It has excused him from it. Somebody will say, but should not greater faith produce greater certainty? Yes, confidence in God should grow. But confidence in God does not require confidence in every mechanism we imagine. Faith can be settled while details remain open. It can say, I trust God, I will seek wisdom, and I will obey what I know to do without pretending to possess information it has not received. Expectation is not entitlement. Prayerful desire is not guaranteed prediction. You may desire a particular outcome and ask for it earnestly, but you must not turn your desire into a promise and then demand that others affirm it. Perhaps you have done that. Perhaps you spoke with great certainty, the deadline passed, and the outcome did not occur. Then shame came, and you wondered whether disappointment proved that you had no faith. Friends, do not answer one error with another. Admit that the declaration went beyond what you knew. Evaluate the choices made under its influence. Correct what needs correction. Continue trusting, and take the responsible step now before you. And be especially careful about declarations that place pressure on a household. Do not tell a spouse, child, friend, or congregation that they must agree with an unsupported financial outcome to prove their faith. Agreement cannot turn speculation into truth, and spiritual pressure cannot make presumption wise. Hold fast to hope, but hold it honestly. Refuse the language of permanent defeat, and refuse the fantasy of guaranteed details. Let trust remain joined to work, counsel, stewardship, patience, and action. We have now exposed fear on one side and presumption on the other. So what does the balanced position sound like? It is time to consider the third pattern, grounded biblical agreement. Fear says there is no way forward. Presumption claims to know every detail of the way forward. Grounded agreement trusts God while taking the next faithful step. Now, what do we mean by agreement? We mean bringing our thoughts, our words, and our conduct under the governing principles of Scripture. Agreement is not using religious language to escape reality. It is allowing truth to govern how we face reality. There are 6 parts to grounded financial speech, and they belong together. First, there is gratitude for present provision. Begin by recognizing what is already in your hand. The work you can do, the help you have received, the resources presently available, and the people willing to stand with you. Second, there is honesty about present need. Gratitude does not require you to pretend that what you have is enough for every obligation. You can be thankful and still acknowledge a gap. Third, there is expectation without invented details. You can expect wisdom, help, and a way to move forward without announcing a precise amount, source, or timetable that you do not know. Fourth, there is willingness to work. Faith is prepared to act, learn, apply, call, follow through, and do the next task faithfully. Fifth, there is commitment to stewardship. Whatever is present must be handled honestly and purposefully, whether it seems like much or little. Sixth, there is openness to wisdom. Grounded faith can receive counsel, correction, and a better plan. You see, remove honesty and gratitude can become denial. Remove expectation and honesty can sink into despair. Remove responsibility and expectation can become presumption. These truths are not competing with one another, they support one another. Grounded speech may sound like this: God, I thank you for what is present. You see what is lacking. Give me wisdom. Help me recognize provision and show me what I must do. I will act faithfully on the light I have. Provision may come through ordinary means. It may involve diligent work, spending restraint, cooperation in the household, wise counsel, change priorities, or unexpected help. We do not have to despise the ordinary while waiting for the dramatic, and we do not have to guarantee which route provision will take. Think of faithful speech as a compass, not a vending mechanism. You do not insert a declaration and demand a selected result. A compass keeps you oriented while you walk. In the same way, grounded agreement keeps your heart and conduct pointed toward gratitude, truth, wisdom, and obedience even when the whole path is not visible. That kind of speech produces steadiness rather than spectacle. It can be spoken calmly before the figures change, because its confidence is not built on pretending the figures have already changed. So examine your declarations. Do they make room for correction? Can they survive patience? Do they lead you toward obedience? Or must everybody ignore the facts and agree with your prediction to keep the declaration standing? Here is the principle. Truthful faith speaks hopefully, listens humbly, and acts responsibly. It does not deny the need, and it does not worship the need. It trusts God and takes the next faithful step. Now, this grounded agreement must be tested where financial faith is often tested most clearly: at the desk, in the plan, and in honest work. Now, take this teaching from the mouth to the desk. Put the calendar beside the account records. Bring the obligations into view. Faith must not only be heard in what we say, it must be seen in how we handle what has been entrusted to us. Some people think planning for expenses is a confession of lack. No, planning is not saying that God will not provide. Planning is giving present resources an honest assignment. If you refuse to make a plan because you call planning unbelief, then what will guide your spending wisdom or impulse? Begin simply. Identify what is coming in. List what must be paid. Distinguish needs from wants. Set the order of importance. Then review the decisions you have made. Do not use the plan to condemn yourself. Use it to bring your conduct into agreement with what you say you believe. And notice how faithful speech can accompany every step. While counting resources, say, I am thankful for what is present. While identifying the gap, say, I will be honest about what is needed. While changing a plan, say, I am willing to correct my course. While continuing through pressure, say, I will not lose hope, and I will do what is mine to do. Honest work belongs here too. Work is not a punishment for having too little faith. It is a channel of responsibility. Doing your present work well, seeking suitable work when necessary, developing a useful ability, completing an application, following through on a conversation, and keeping a commitment are all places where faithfulness can become practical. Now, none of that is a promise of immediate financial reward. We do not replace one exaggeration with another. Faithful effort does not put God in our debt. But the absence of a guaranteed result does not excuse the absence of responsible effort. Consider the difference between two declarations. One person says everything will work out and then waits passively while known duties remain undone. Another says, I expect wisdom and help, and today I will complete this application, make this call, and review this expense. The first declaration substitutes for action. The second strengthens action. Perhaps the review reveals avoidable waste or an impulsive habit. Correct it, but do not turn correction into condemnation. Say that choice was unwise and I will change it. You do not need to say I am hopeless with money. One statement opens the door to growth, the other nails it shut. Remember, consistency is often quieter than drama. A responsible choice repeated day after day may accomplish more than one emotional declaration followed by no change. So take every financial statement you are making and place an action beside it. If you say you trust for wisdom, what decision will you examine? If you say you expect opportunity, what work will you complete? If you say you are a steward, what resource will you assign faithfully? Budgeting, adjustment, diligent work, and follow-through are not competitors to faith. They are places where faith becomes visible. Yet personal effort is not the whole answer. Responsible faith also knows when its understanding must be enlarged through counsel and wiser decisions. There is another place where faith must become practical, in our willingness to receive counsel and correction. Spiritual language should never be used as a shield to keep a financial decision from being examined. Now, grounded confidence remains teachable. It does not call every question opposition, and it does not call every warning fear. If a plan cannot survive an honest question, perhaps the plan needs examination more than it needs defense. Receiving counsel is not the same as surrendering control of your life. Another person does not become responsible for your decision merely because you listen to that person. Counsel enlarges your understanding. Responsibility remains with you, but you must listen honestly. Do not ask for advice after deciding that every answer except your own will be rejected. A useful financial conversation requires accurate facts. Bring the actual income, the relevant obligations, the true cost, and the terms of the commitment. Ask clear questions. Resist selective reporting. If you hide the information that might change the answer, you are not seeking wisdom, you are seeking approval. Suppose someone is considering a major purchase. Excitement rises, the opportunity seems urgent, and he says, I just know this is right. But the figures have not been reviewed, the household has not reached agreement, and experienced counsel has raised reasonable concerns. Is that faith, or is it impulse dressed in religious language? Patient evaluation does not insult faith. A person can pray, gather facts, consider consequences, listen to counsel, and allow time for emotional intensity to settle. Urgency can pretend to be guidance. Embarrassment can hurry a decision because we do not want anyone to know our condition. Envy can call comparison a vision. Excitement can feel like certainty. That is why wisdom asks us to slow down long enough to tell the difference. And when new information appears, wise speech can change. It can say, I did not understand that. My earlier plan was incomplete. I will revise it. That is not speaking defeat. That is speaking truth. Pride says I must defend my first statement. Wisdom says I will correct my course and remain hopeful. This is especially important within a household. Respect one another. Share the relevant facts. Accept shared responsibility where decisions are shared. Never use claims about faith to silence a spouse or pressure the family into agreement. Do not make a purchase, promise, gift, or commitment merely to prove confidence before other people. Faith does not need a public display at the expense of integrity. Identify one decision before you now. Does it need more information? Does it need a second opinion? Does it need a slower timetable? Give yourself permission to ask the necessary questions. Correction is not your enemy, and patience is not unbelief. Remember the chain. Humble words keep attention open. Open attention can receive wisdom. Wisdom received can guide better action. Teachability and confidence belong together. Once wisdom governs how we receive, spend, and decide, another important matter comes before us. We must learn how to give generously without turning generosity into a transaction. Generosity belongs in a faithful financial life. But generosity is not an isolated technique for obtaining a desired result. It is an expression of gratitude and love, and it must remain joined to wisdom and stewardship. Now, people can give from very different motives. One person gives from panic, hoping to force a financial outcome. Another gives for display, wanting approval or a reputation for boldness. A third gives freely because the heart is thankful and willing. The outward act may look similar, but the governing motive is different. Giving from panic says, I must do this so that something will happen for me. Giving for display says, I want people to see what I have done. Grounded generosity says, I am thankful for what has been entrusted to me, and I want to use it faithfully for the good of others. Remember, generosity does not cancel responsibility. It does not justify promises you cannot keep, and it does not make reckless commitments wise. You cannot neglect an obligation, disregard your household, and then call the neglect faith merely because money was given away. At the same time, do not allow scarcity to harden your heart. Fear may say, hold everything, share nothing, there will never be enough. Wisdom may shape the form and measure of what you can responsibly give, but fear should not extinguish a generous spirit. And generosity is not limited to money. You may be able to give time, service, hospitality, encouragement, practical assistance, or the use of something already available. A person whose financial capacity is limited is not therefore incapable of generosity. We must also reject transactional language. Giving is not a mechanism by which you purchase a specified return on a specified timetable. Expectation has its place, but bargaining is not trust. You do not give in order to place God under obligation to perform according to your calculation. Grounded speech sounds different. It says, I am thankful that I can contribute. I will be honest about my present capacity. I will give willingly, without pressure or display, and I will continue trusting God without demanding a particular return. Suppose a family becomes aware of someone's need. They sit down together, review their own obligations, and discuss what they can do. Perhaps they decide on a modest financial gift and some practical help. They do not accuse one another of unbelief. They do not make a dramatic promise to impress anyone. They agree, they act with integrity, and they give with a willing heart. You see, quiet consistency often reveals more than a public gesture. Faithful generosity does not need spectacle. It needs sincerity, wisdom, and love. So examine the language surrounding your giving. Does it produce freedom and gratitude, or pressure and fear? Does it encourage responsibility, or does it excuse recklessness? Does it serve another person, or is it trying to prove something about you? Give generously, but do not gamble spiritually. Give freely, but do not bargain. Let generosity remain a genuine expression of faith joined to sound stewardship. The principles are now in place. The next step is to put a grounded vocabulary into your mouth for those ordinary moments when financial pressure rises. The purpose of this vocabulary is not to give you impressive slogans to memorize. It is to train your speech to remain truthful, hopeful, and actionable when pressure rises. If the words sound strong but lead nowhere, they have not served you well. Use 4 movements: acknowledge, give thanks, expect, and act. First, acknowledge the condition. Say what is due, what is available, and what is lacking. This obligation is real, and the present resources do not yet cover it. Notice what that sentence does not contain. It contains no shame, no accusation, and no declaration of permanent defeat. It reports the condition without surrendering to it. Second, give thanks for what is present. You may say, I am thankful for the ability to work, for the people who will speak honestly with me, for the time I have today, and for every resource presently available. Gratitude does not pretend those things are sufficient for every need. It simply refuses to overlook what fear would dismiss. Third, expect wisdom and provision without inventing the details. Say, I believe a way forward can become clear. I am expecting wisdom and help, though I do not yet know the exact method or timetable. That is hopeful, but it is also humble. Fourth, name the next responsible act. Today I will make the call. I will complete the application. I will review the account. I will have the necessary conversation. I will adjust this expense. I will ask for counsel. I will finish the work before me. Now, the confession is not floating above your life. It is walking through your life. What if you experience a setback? Do not say, I have failed again, so nothing will ever change. Say, that decision did not produce the result I hoped for. I will examine what happened, correct what I can, receive instruction, and continue faithfully. You have rejected condemnation without rejecting evaluation. Vague positivity says everything is wonderful when everything is not wonderful. Grounded confession says this is difficult, but difficulty will not govern my identity or excuse me from responsibility. The grounded statement is modest about outcomes, but specific about obedience. This language can also change a household. Instead of you always waste money, say we need to review this expense together. Instead of we are finished, say we are under pressure and we need a wise plan. Instead of nobody understands, say let us seek counsel and bring the full facts. Do not use these statements mechanically, and do not judge another person by how polished his language sounds. Faith is not a contest in religious vocabulary. The words must be honest, and the conduct must agree with them. For the next 7 days, listen to your recurring financial phrases. Write them down. Test each one. Is it true? Is it hopeful? Does it support responsible action? Rewrite any statement that encourages fear, blame, denial, or presumption. You now have a flexible pattern: acknowledge, give thanks, expect, and act. But vocabulary becomes mature only when it survives real situations. So let us test this pattern against several common forms of financial pressure. Let us put this pattern under pressure, because the principle must work in more than one kind of situation. Suppose income is reduced. Panic says everything is collapsing. Grounded faith says our income has changed, but this change will not become our identity. We are thankful for what remains. We will revise the plan, seek suitable work or counsel, and continue expecting wisdom. Tell the truth, reject hopelessness, receive wisdom, and take the next step. Now suppose an unexpected expense appears. The temptation may be blame. One person asks who caused it, and another becomes defensive. But calm speech says this expense is real. Let us not accuse one another. Let us examine what is available and consider our options together. Grounded words preserve cooperation, and cooperation makes room for better action. Perhaps the pressure came through a past mistake. You spent unwisely, ignored a warning, or accepted a commitment you did not understand. Shame says, I am a failure. Faithful correction says that decision was poor and I accept the consequences. I will learn, make the necessary correction, and refuse to turn one mistake into my permanent name. Confession admits wrong. Wisdom changes direction. Grace refuses endless punishment. Then there is the waiting season. You have made the calls, completed the work, sought counsel, and no immediate solution is visible. Impatience wants to invent a deadline simply to feel certain. Do not do it. Keep communicating. Keep fulfilling known responsibilities. Keep your expectation open without attaching it to a timetable you cannot guarantee. Patient faithfulness is still faithfulness. Suppose a promising opportunity appears. It may be good, but excitement is not sufficient evidence. Gather the facts, consider the cost, seek counsel, respect responsible limits. You can say, I am grateful for this possibility, and I will evaluate it carefully. Enthusiasm governed by wisdom is stronger than impulse disguised as faith. And suppose you want to give while resources are constrained. A willing heart need not become a reckless hand. Review your obligations, speak honestly with those affected, and decide what form generosity can responsibly take. It may be money, or it may be time, service, hospitality, or practical help. Give without display and without bargaining. The temptation changes panic, blame, shame, impatience, impulsiveness, or the desire to impress, but the faithful sequence remains the same. Tell the truth. Reject hopelessness. Receive wisdom. Choose the next responsible action. Keep expectation free from invented guarantees. The outward condition may not change the moment you speak, but your posture can change. Your attention can change. Your conduct can change. And when attention and conduct are brought under truth, pressure no longer has uncontested control of the household. Which situation is nearest to you today? Write one truthful statement about it. Then write one responsible step you can take. Do not borrow somebody else's dramatic language. Speak honestly, hopefully, and specifically. We have tested the principle in practice. Now let us gather the whole message into a personal rule of life and an immediate commitment. We began with a bill on the table, and we end with the same clear distinction. The bill may be real, but defeat does not have to become your identity. Fear takes a present condition and predicts permanent helplessness. Hype takes a hopeful desire and invents certainty about the amount, method, or timetable. Grounded agreement does something better. It tells the truth, holds fast to hope, remains teachable, and obeys the next responsible instruction. Remember the chain. What you believe finds expression in what you repeatedly say. What you repeatedly say directs your attention. What receives your attention influences your decisions, and your decisions become conduct. So let your speech keep faithful conduct before you. Financial faith is not merely a declaration. It walks with gratitude, stewardship, generosity, wisdom, counsel, planning, and honest work. Separate your words from those companions, and you will drift toward denial or presumption. Keep them together, and what you confess can become visible in how you live. Make this your personal pattern. This is the present condition, but it will not govern my identity. I remain hopeful and teachable. I will receive wisdom, and I will take the next responsible step. That statement does not promise an outcome you cannot control. It places your heart, your mouth, and your actions under truth. Now stop rehearsing permanent defeat. Stop manufacturing spectacular promises. Speak in a way that helps you face facts, receive counsel, recognize provision, and act faithfully. Today, review one obligation. Correct one recurring phrase. Seek counsel if counsel is needed. Then complete one practical step before the day ends. Make the call. Review the expense. Finish the application. Begin the conversation. Do what you already know to do. Pressure may speak loudly, but it does not have to govern your heart. It does not have to govern your mouth, and it does not have to govern your next decision. Continue this alignment tomorrow and the day after that. Tell the truth. Refuse hopelessness. Listen humbly and act responsibly until truthful hope and faithful action become the settled pattern of your household.